In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang soki chonam la shangju bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi jinsoki pe sonamgi drola penshir sangye drupasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yampe semchen tam she dewa dang dewe gurdang dempa jorchi. Dugnal dang dunal gi gudang drawar jorchi. Dugnal me pe dewa dang mi drawar jorchi. Ne ring chak dang ni dang drawe tang namla ne pa jorchi. Okay, so now we'll do a short meditation to calm our minds and to get ourselves ready. So we'll do a 5-minute meditation tonight. So sit in the 7-point posture of Varanchana, and you can watch your breath. So we'll do it quiet from the beginning. So we've been over the procedure of watching the breath several times, so you can do that on your own. And if you wish, you can chant a mantra to yourself, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Ma Hum. You can just center your mind on the quietude of your space. So we begin now. Take a deep breath. Fill your lungs with fresh, clean, pure air and hold your breath. Exhale very completely. Push all that stale, negative, dark air out and hold that vacant breath. And just relax and open your eyes. Breathe normal. Okay. Thank you very much. So what we've been talking about these past number of weeks since we started the dual ornamental liberation has been how to put ourselves on the path. And the first part of putting ourselves on the path is to understand how it is that we got here. What karma, what deeds, what desire, what aspirations brought us here. So this is the first part of developing a daily practice. We say this is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So what we have been doing, we first talked about what it is to have the working basis, what it is to be a human being, and not just a human being, but a precious human being, to have the facilities and so on to be able to experience the Dharma path. So we look at that, and we were examining that in the chapters of the working basis, what it is to have a precious human life. And then we talked about the spiritual master, and now we've been talking about the impermanence. Chapter 4, the past couple of weeks, we talked about chapter 4, the impermanence. So this is the second of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, that we recognize that things are temporary, and that might be frightening to us. So by having some understanding of what this impermanence is and how it is that we got here, and be able to abide in that impermanence becomes part of the practice. So this is a motivation for us to be on the path. So that's the second thought that turns the mind to the Dharma. The third thought that turns the mind to the Dharma is the suffering of samsara. We call this phenomenal nature, all this phenomena, all this confusion. We call this samsara, the ocean of suffering. Not that it's completely suffering. There's many happinesses, many enjoyments along the way, but everything does change. Everything does go through impermanence. Everything does change. And ultimately, our body changes and our body dies. So the suffering of samsara becomes a motivation for us to want to understand the Buddha Dharma. And then the fourth thought that turns the mind to the Dharma is the karma, cause, and its result. The karma is the action that we take. To have an action, we have to have a cause. And then when we take that action, then there has to be a result. So we examine the relationship of the karma, cause, and result as a motivation for us to be on this path, to be able to understand its predictability. So in the mail, I sent everybody this text. This is called The 4 Thoughts That Turn the Mind to the Dharma. So this actually becomes the first part of a daily practice, something that we recite every day. And all the Buddhists that I know, all the Tibetan Buddhists that I know, all the lamas, including the Dalai Lama and the leaders in our lineage, the Drikung Kagyu lineage, all recite this as part of their daily practice, because it's very easy for us to get complacent. It's very easy for us to lose our intention, what our motivation is. So this is part of stabilizing that motivation, why we do the practices, why we do the meditations that we do, and so on. So on the cover of this book, if you all have this book, So on the cover of this book, you see in the center is the this little symbol right here. Excuse me. There it is the Dharma wheel. That's the eight spoke Dharma wheel. So when we talk about the eightfold path of the Dharma, that's the symbol of that, the eightfold path that we talk about is in the four truths, the Four Noble Truths. Surrounding that are all these wisdom jewels that we cultivate, that we develop as we proceed along the Dharma path. We develop these wisdom jewels about all samsara and nirvana, all the things that are around us. And then on either side are the texts, the scriptures. So it's through these texts that we can really focus by ourselves. We receive teachings that come from these texts, but then we have these texts also to take home, to be with us, that we can reflect upon, that we can use as materials for our study, to help us to develop and stabilize these wisdom jewels. So this is the preliminary foundation of the awakenings, why it is that we're on this path. So we come to this first page, and it's precious human life. So if you can, please, everybody recite with me the top portion here. Recite, you can keep your microphones off so we don't get all feedback and so on, but recite with me the precious human life. The freedoms and advantages so extremely difficult to obtain accomplish the purpose of human life. If one does not achieve benefit from this now, how could this opportunity come again? Oh, this kind of leisure and endowment is supremely difficult to obtain. When we obtain a body which is easily lost, do not waste it meaninglessly, but rather use it to attain ultimate liberation, joyous result. Ultimate liberation, joyous result. Liberation from the suffering of samsara, from our precious human life. It's our precious human life that brings us to this awareness where we can recognize the causes of our sufferings and so on, and so that we can liberate from that. So this prayer is very, very fundamental, very, very succinct. This precious human life is identified several different ways, but maybe the most interesting is to be able to tell this story that is in italics here at the bottom of this page number 1, where it says, "It has been said to be born a precious human being is more difficult than a blind turtle at the bottom of a vast ocean, greater than all the oceans combined on the earth, rising up from the depths of the water once every 100 years in order to poke its head through a single small wooden yoke floating on the ocean's surface." That's how rare, that's how difficult it is to have a precious human life. Right now, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. And how many of those people do you think have become aware of the Buddha Dharma teachings? Very, very, very few. How many do you think have been aware of even spirituality itself? The number is going to be greater than that, but it's not going to be that great as 7.5 billion. Most people don't have a sense of spirituality within themselves. So to have that sense, to have that ability to be able to recognize and practice that is very rare as a blind turtle rising up once every 100 years to poke his head right through that yoke floating on the ocean. So it's very special. So all the people I'm looking at right now on this screen, it's very, very rare that we've got these people to be able to do that, that you are here now doing this. What is it that brought you to be able to do this? So it's your precious human life is one of the motivations. You may have thought, wow, I'm really educated. I'm really fortunate. I live in this great place. And still, I'm looking for something that is really special, something beyond our ordinary human experience. So this speaks of that precious human life. So what is it that we can do that? Why can we do that? So here it says the freedoms and advantages, so extremely difficult to obtain in this first stanza. In the second stanza, it says, oh, this kind of leisure and endowment. So the leisures are the 8 freedoms or the 8 leisures, and the endowments or the advantages are the 10 endowments. So if we turn to page 7 and 8 here in this book, we can see that, excuse me, I got my pages out of whack here. Page 7 are the 8 leisures. So the 8 leisures mean to be free from the 8 unfavorable conditions. So the 8 unfavorable conditions, I'm going to go through this quickly because you can study this to contemplate this on your own. So to be free from the 8 unfavorable conditions, that we are not born in the hell realms where there is constant suffering, no opportunity to practice the Dharma, that we are not an improper vessel, that we have a evolution that we have accomplished already, and we are suitable to be able to receive these teachings, and we are not bound up in a life that is full of hatred and full of killing and full of being killed and so on, like being in a hell realm. So we're not suffering from that. That we're not born in a hungry ghost realm, where we're not tortured by burning metal, by mental burning, by mental burning, no opportunity to practice Dharma. We're not an improper vessel there. So in the hungry ghost realm, the beings there are insatiable. They're miserable because they are not able to satisfy their hunger, their thirst for food, for water, or for knowledge, or for material things. They're always miserable. They're always suffering because of their greed. They can never get enough of what it is that they want to satisfy that. So we're not suffering from that. We may have episodes. We may have episodes right now in this current life where we might feel that way. We might think that. We may have had episodes like that in the past of our life. Earlier when we were younger, years ago or something, we may have felt like that. We may have been through times when we felt like we were in a hell realm. Maybe we were, in some kind of a foreign land or something like that, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to live through the experience because there was famine going on, or there was war going on, where there was some kind of terrible things happening that was risking our lives and so on. So we may have had episodes like that we can relate to, and we certainly know people that have been in these situations. The third one is we're not born in the animal realm. We're mostly overpowered by stupidity. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We have very little ability to be able to change our environment. There's no opportunity there to practice the Dharma. There's not enough intelligence to be able to do that as an animal. So therefore, we are an improper vessel for the Dharma teachings. That we don't know, an animal doesn't know how to read and write. An animal doesn't know how to meditate, to think, doesn't know how to talk. So there's many reasons that being an animal is an improper vessel to be able to receive the teachings. So there's no leisure for this. An animal is constantly searching for food, constantly searching for to propagate the sex, is certainly always looking to be able to be satisfied by itself. And number 4 is to be where we're not born in a barbarian, where there is difficulty in meeting spiritual beings who believe their negativity is positive behavior. So, we think of barbarians. I think of barbarians as, many, many years ago when the barbarians were coming from the Eastern countries and were swooping away across Asia and into Europe and laying waste all these people and coming with their great swords and cutting off people's heads and doing all these things and stealing and pillaging and raping as they go and so on, and taking over the land for some period of time and thinking that this was a great way to live, thinking this was very enjoyable, this was wonderful. So we ourselves may have seen this, and in our lifetime, in the not too distant past, we've seen that. We've seen behavior like that, where people have acted like barbarians and have done these terrible things and so on, and how terrorizing this was, and how we were just astonished that this could happen in the 21st century. But yet it still does, because there are still barbarians among us. But we are not suffering from that. We have the leisure of not having to suffer from that ourselves. Then number 5 is we are not born as a long life God, where we abide in non-conceptual state with no mental activity, no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So these long life gods are not like a supreme being God. We shouldn't confuse it with that. We'll leave that discussion for another time. But these are beings who are great leaders, they're great educators, they're great politicians, they're great wealthy people who have great influence over a great many people. But these people have this notion, have this pridefulness that they have these secrets. They had this ability to be able to be above the suffering of all the other people. And that they may have wisdom that has helped them to attain this level, but they're not willing to share it with others. They're very prideful what they have, so they're not willing to help other beings. They kind of turn their cheek, they kind of turn their backs to those people, even though they may be supplicated, even though they may be saying, oh, you have so much. Why can't you share that with us? You have wisdom. Why can't you share that with them? You have resources. Why can't you share that with us? And they find ways to be able to block that out. So we may not have that ability. We may not be long life gods like that, who have great luxurious lives, who are endured by many people who sustain them through their lifetime and so on. So they are so caught up in themselves, they do not have the ability to recognize and practice the Dharma because they're so selfish. Number 6 is rebirth among people that hold wrong views, that do not understand karma. They have what we say wrong world views, that they think that they can behave with impunity in being selfish, that they can, that there's no law of karma. There's not a natural law of karma, that what they do, they can get away with anything that they can, whether it's something like paying taxes, or it's something like helping brothers and sisters, whether it's helping the earth, that they can get away with this. They have no shame about themselves in doing these things. They have no sense of reciprocity. So we may not be suffering from that. To be a precious human being, to have these leisures, that would be one of the characteristics. We may have twangs of that. We may feel that sometimes. We may feel that now, but we have the ability to be able to overcome that, to recognize that that's something I need to work on. That's something I need to be able to overcome. These wrong world views, to be able to educate myself. And number 7 is to be reborn in a land that is absent of a Buddha. So a Buddha is an awakened one. A Buddha is a great teacher. A Buddha is a teacher of liberation. So we may not be born in the same land as the Buddha was 2,600 years ago, but there are many Buddhas among us right now. And the teachings are such that they are timeless and they are positionless. Anywhere on the earth, we can receive and practice those teachings. So we are at a precious human life level where we can recognize that and we can take advantage of those. We can seize those opportunities. Many people don't have those opportunities. They may be born in lands where they're quite destitute and so on, and not have that ability. And then number 8 of the 8 leisures is that we're not born as a stupid person who cannot understand the difference between virtue and non-virtue. And unfortunately, some people are born that way. They don't have common sense. They don't have the ability to know right from wrong. They don't have the intelligence ability to be able to do that. And so they're not a proper vessel to be able to be a precious human being. They may have many redeeming qualities. And even though some people are born with lesser abilities, some people do have, wonderful attributes about them, wonderful characteristics about them. But I think you understand the difference I'm making here is those people that don't understand virtue and non-virtue. And so we are free of that. So these are the 8 leisures that we are fortunate to have this life, that we are not subject to these unfavorable conditions. Somebody wants to say something?
Yeah, Lance. This is Grant.
Yes.
So do you take these 18 hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, the demigod realm, the god realm? Do you take those literally?
Of course not.
Okay.
Not in the sense that they are characterized in the book, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But just to answer your question quite succinctly, they are indicative of the psychophysical drama that human beings go through. The psychophysical drama of being in hell, of being hungry ghosts, of being animals, of being gods, of being jealous gods. As human beings, that's what human beings are subject to. So we're going to get into that discussion very soon. Tonight, we're going to start that discussion. So I hope that answers your question quickly. There's not.
So just
yes, thank you.
Just as a comment further, those various pictures that we see from time to time of deities and the flames are shooting out in one direction or another, or the arms are going this way or that way. Those are also capturing a psychophysical state. Yes, okay, thank you.
There are illustrations of that, of the drama that we are subject to. So we'll get more into those topics very soon. But we need to understand, you see, so much of what our life is taken for granted. So much of our possibilities, so much of the gifts that we have are taken for granted. So we really need to understand these very basic things as to why it is that we have these fortunate things. And we should have gratitude for our life, that we have these fortunate situations in our lives and so on. And we should be able to recognize what they are. And by doing that for ourselves, we can help other beings to recognize it for them. Because everything that we're doing, remember, we're dedicating to the merit of other beings, to help other beings. So we need to be able to communicate this to ourselves and then to other beings as we have the opportunity to do that, whether it's our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our relatives, etc. So it's important to know this and to have these reference materials to know where to go to get this information to refresh ourselves. Like I said, we repeat this every day. So now, page 8 are the 10 endowments. So these endowments are like investments that we make, these enrichments of being a human being. So there's 5 external and there's 5 internal. The 5 external are more self-explanatory. They're born where the Buddha has arrived in this world. Buddha has taught the precious Dharma. The Dharma continues to be taught. There is a Sangha to maintain the teachings, and there is love and kind support to continue the Dharma practice. So this is what's all around us. It's external of our bodies, but it's all around us. And this is coming into a Sangha, coming into a group of people like this that fosters all of that. The internal qualities, the internal enrichments, the internal endowments are those that birth as a human being, born in an area that has the Dharma teachings, born with the full faculties of all the senses, that we have our abilities, not having committed the 5 heinous crimes, the evil deeds of killing a father, killing a mother, killing an arhat, causing injury to a Buddha, or causing a schism in the Sangha. And then having devotion to the Dharma. These are internal qualities that we have within ourselves. So we're developing those. We may recognize those. We may not completely be stable with those, but we're willing to engage in this recognition and to develop a stability in this. So these are the endowments, the enrichments that we have that signify our precious human life. Yes, William.
Yeah, Lance, I have a question about the doing all these practices. How many practices how long does it take you to do these practices that we've been doing here?
You mean the recitation of these?
Yeah, you know, during the day, you're talking about 3 or 4 different practices that we're, because we're doing both classes, we've got 3 or 4 practices that we're talking about doing. And how long does it take you to do all of these?
Well, everybody has their own priorities. And what we're doing here is being able to give you the resources to be able to construct your own practices. You know, so if you've got a half an hour every day, you know, what you do in that half hour. You know, if you've got an hour, what you do in that hour. If you've got several different times of the day, you do something, say, first thing in the morning and then last thing at night, what do you do in those times and so on. So, so we're pointing this out and saying that with someone who has a precious human life and someone who practices a precious human life every day, this is a vital ingredient in that practice.
Is there a minimum amount of
Time?
practices that we do that we should be
Well,
doing?
I think it's something that we can talk about, and you know, whether it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, the goal is to be able to stabilize that and have that make a difference in your day. You know, if you're reciting something for 15 minutes and then you get up and you just go and do all your stuff that you normally do with no connection back to those 15 minutes, well, it's not a very deep practice. But if that practice in 15 minutes becomes a basis for the rest of your day, well, that's very meaningful. So that's what we're trying to get to, whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. And what we find is if you're really sincere about this and you make a commitment to do this, that these practices grow on their own, that you enjoy it so much that you want to do it more and more and more. It's the best part of your day. It's the only time you may have peace. And so you want to do that, and you find that this is your natural state. This is where you want to be. This is where you were meant to be. You know, were you meant to be going out and doing all these things and having all this turmoil and having all this confusion? Is that what we were meant to do? Or were we meant to be happy and blissful and peaceful and kind and loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity? When do we have that? So it's an individual question. And right now, like I said, we're looking at all the building blocks of what that can be.
Lance, I think doing all these practices helps us be happier and peaceful while we might be out doing all these other things that need to be done.
Exactly. Yes. Because those things need to be done, but our practice needs to be done. But that's the first thing that we step on our way, you know, saying, oh, I don't have enough time.
Right. But the effects of doing the practice carries with us then throughout the day.
Of course. So we're realigning our priorities through making ourselves aware of the benefits of doing these practices. And then having a routine practice is invaluable in being able to structure our day. Just like when we get up in the morning, we got our routine and so on, and we carve out some time to do our spiritual practice. Okay. So this precious human life, we have to be able to feed that precious human life. We need to be able to sustain that precious human life. We need to constantly nurture it and be aware of it and so on. Otherwise, like I said, it's very easy to be suppressed. So then we come to page 2. So page 2 and page 3, actually. So remember, these are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. So page 2 is impermanence, page 2 and 3. So read this out loud with me. You don't have to turn your microphones on. But it says ka, which is a word of expression. Ka, no matter what has been done, nothing benefits at the time of death. Worldly activities, yes, they are lies. Ka, the 8 worldly dharmas are like painted rainbow. They think you can put your trust in them. In the certainty of death and knowing that nothing remains long, quickly accomplish liberation. Impermanence makes departure certain, like the shadow of the setting sun. Abandoning laziness and indifference, blaze like fire and fierce diligence. This life is impermanent, like clouds in the autumn sky. Birth and death migrators are the same, like actors in a play or performance or dance. The life of beings is like lightning in the sky. Like water falling from a steep mountain cliff, it departs quickly, quickly. The nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend anytime, like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So these 2 pages here really condense what the different characteristics of impermanence can mean to us. The fundamental thing that it's saying is that no matter what's been done, nothing benefits at the time of our death. That no matter what we have, no matter what we've done, when we die naked. And that we go on, no matter what money we have, no matter what riches we have, no matter what family we have, we all go away by ourselves. And that we have these 8 worldly concerns that block out our spirituality. So what are these 8 worldly concerns? Because this is what we spend most of our time thinking about. So it says here at the bottom of the page 5, or page 3, it says the 8 worldly concerns, or the 8 worldly dharmas. So these dharmas are pathways, things that we do. The Buddha Dharma is the supreme pathway. But how much do we spend time thinking about our gain and loss, whether it's money, whether it's things that we gain with people, friends that we gain. How much time do we think about losing our money? How much time do we think about losing our friends, losing our family, and so on? So all the different things that we can think about that we can classify as gaining something and then having it, but then losing it. How much time do we actually think about that? So we should contemplate that. And then pleasure and pain. How much time do we think about that this, if I engage in this activity, is going to give me great pleasure? You know, having a relationship is going to give me great pleasure. But then when that relationship goes away, how much pain I suffer when I lose my lover, when I lose someone that I care for that gives me such great pleasure, how quickly that turns to pain. And then how about praise and blame? How much time do we think about praise in our families or in our workplace? You know, that I've done such a wonderful thing and I've brought in money to the business. I've done these things. I've brought in accounts. I've hired this person or something. How wonderful it is. And everybody's coming and patting me on the back and telling me what a great job I did and how terrific it is. And they give me a special parking place in the parking lot for my car. All these things, you know, because of my praise. Maybe they give me an award, you know, but then how about when something happens and I lose that account, when I lose that money, when I lose something that we were working hard for as a business or in a family or something like that, or maybe there's a divorce in the family that I'm responsible for. And then now I'm a bum. Now there's great blame. Oh, it's all your fault. Your fault that we broke up the family. Oh, it's your fault that we lost that account. Oh, it's your fault that we're not going to be able to hire those new people that we thought we were going to be able to hire, and so on. So praise and blame. How much time do we think about praise and blame? And then fame and disgrace. You know, if we happen to be in a situation where a lot of people know us and we have this great fame of doing wonderful things, and often we can think about, you know, some of our heroes. You know, they might be sports heroes, they might be business figures, they might be religious figures, they might be business people, if I didn't say that already. You know, they might be these great people who have great fame. And people really adore them, and they name their children after them, and they want to be like them. They take up their careers and so on. They want to be just like these people and so on. But then after some time, we find out that they've got these skeletons in the closet, you know, and all their fame goes out with the disgrace and finding out that they have done terrible things in their family. They've done terrible things with money. They've done terrible things with relationships when they were younger, all kinds of things. So no matter what stature they may have had, what fame they may have had, all of a sudden now the rug is pulled from beneath their feet, and now they are disgraced people and wind up in jail, wind up, you know, in some kind of ostracized, that they've been ostracized from their community and so on. So the point here is we should contemplate how much all these things do we think about: gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, praise and blame. And then why aren't we thinking about our spirituality? Why aren't we thinking about our impermanence? Why aren't we thinking about good things that are meaningful at the time of our death? Something that we can be satisfied with and know that we have accomplished good things in our life that will bring us greater life in the future, in the next life. We have in these people that I'm looking at, we have benefit of past things that we've done in our lives, in past lives. And that's why we are here now, to be able to be in these spiritual teachings and so on. And also that during this life that we've done good things, that we haven't wound up in jail. Maybe we have. Maybe we've gotten out now, and now we're on the path to doing good things. But the point is that we have benefits that result from doing good things and being spiritual beings. So we say the nature of phenomena, this last stanza here, is the nature of all phenomena is impermanence. Death is a certainty to all who are born. Death can descend anytime like a drop of morning dew on a blade of grass. Quick, it is time to make effort for the essence of the Dharma. So we need to understand what the natural law is, the natural law of reciprocity, and be able to honor that and be able to live in that life. So does anybody have any questions about precious human life or impermanence? Okay. So then we come to the next one, and this is where we left off last week in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation on chapter 5, the suffering of samsara. So here it says in this practice text on page 4, it says, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. In the 3 lower realms, and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So this samsara is condensed into this illustration of the card that I sent you, the picture of the wheel of existence. That's called the wheel of existence. And it's got 6 segments to it. And each of those segments is a realm of suffering. So you can see that there is a semicircle. There's 3 lower realms and there's 3 higher realms. So the 3 lower realms are the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the hell realm. So the hell realms are the result of great hatred, of great anger, such that we took lives or our lives are threatened and we live in constant fear of our lives being taken away from us, and that we're willing to kill to protect our lives. And maybe to be in that hell is to have killed. And now you're always looking over your shoulder, so to speak, expecting the police to come and apprehend you, or maybe a soldier, the army is coming to apprehend you, or maybe someone's brother is coming to apprehend you because you killed their sister or something like that. That you're in constant fear for your life because of the terrible things that you've done. So that's the hell realm. And there's different hell realms. There's different levels of hell realms that we can talk about that are hot hells and cold hells. And these are very traumatic, things, but this is part of the psychophysical drama that people go through. So people who have done bad things and are in constant fear, constant terror of doing these things, feel like that they are living in a hell. So maybe you can imagine that if you were in that situation, maybe you can recognize that through other people, what they have gone through. So maybe if you've been you've been downtown somewhere and stranded and something happened to your car and you had to get out of your car and fix it. Now you my God, I'm in this hell realm. I don't know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to accost me. I don't know what's going to happen. Where you're in a military zone in some country or something like that. People think that they're in hell. So, and you can ask anybody that's been in some terrible thing. And not too long ago, we've all were watching television and thinking about that and said, we never thought that hell could happen in this place here. But we see that it can, because it wasn't being protected. So this is all part of how we protect things, recognizing that these things do happen. So then there's the hell realm. The hungry ghost realm is indicated by these beings who are insatiable, who are there because of their greediness and never can have enough to be satisfied. So they're characterized by being big round people with very short legs, very short arms, very long necks, and very little mouths, and they can never eat or drink enough to satisfy their hunger and thirst. But that can also mean lots of different things that we do intellectually and so on. And then the animal realm, we talked about, these are stupid beings who cannot, don't recognize themselves. They don't know what they're doing. They can't change very much in their lives and so on. They're very easily enslaved and so on. Those are the three lower realms. We sometimes can behave like hungry ghosts. We sometimes can behave like animals. We sometimes can behave like hell beings. So recognizing that is very important. The three higher realms then are the human realm, which we are obviously part of, and then the jealous God realm and the God realm. The God realms think that they're above everybody else. And so they are suffering from pride. They are there because of pride. The jealous gods are there because of conflict. They have great ability. They have great skillful means. They can convince anybody to give them money, to give them good jobs, to give them power and so on. They're very manipulative in what they can do and so on, but they are very selfish about it. And they're in constant state of conflict with each other because they want to have those beings who are sustaining them to be their beings. And so the jealous gods are in conflict with each other. And they are in conflict with the gods because they want to be like gods. They want to be adored like the gods are. So they're in conflict with the gods. But the gods, they're totally oblivious because they don't even pay attention to the other beings in the other realms and so on, because they're so enamored with their own pleasures. They have no time for any of the other beings. In the human realm, we are there because of our attachments, because of our desires. And we are suffering from change. Everything is changing around us and so on. And we don't understand the dynamics of how all this change is happening. However, it's the human beings who are the ones who can control change more than any of the others. The other ones are more oblivious to change. The humans can recognize the God nature. They can recognize the jealous God nature. They can recognize the animal nature, the hungry ghost nature, and the hell being nature, and see that within themselves, and they can change. And that's what makes human beings special. That's what gives us our quality of being, and on this planet, in this world, ability to be able to recognize ourselves and to be able to change ourselves and to make ourselves awakened as a Buddha and so on. So we talk about being in this samsara, this human realm, the samsara, with these three levels of suffering. First is the suffering of suffering. So the suffering of suffering is being in these six realms that I just detailed for you. That's the suffering of suffering. All the everyday things that we go through. Then the suffering of change, which I said is part of being a human being, that we go through, things don't stay the same. Our bodies change, our relationships change, everything changes and so on. We would like everything to stay the same. Say, why can't things stay the same for 5 years? Why can't it, time's going by so fast. So of course that's impossible. We're subject to this change. And then the last one is called the all-pervading suffering. The all-pervading suffering is very abstract. because it takes a evolved person, it takes a bodhisattva, it takes someone on the path of being a bodhisattva to recognize the compounded suffering of all things, the compounded suffering of phenomena, to recognize that this table was a tree. And as a tree, it was a home to many animals, and it provided shelter. It provided food for animals and for insects and so on like that. But then someone came along and had to saw that tree down, and they had to work very hard to do that. And then they had to drag that tree to the mill. And they had to work very hard to do that. And maybe in the process, they hurt themselves or they hurt somebody else. There was a great deal of suffering that happened when that tree came down. And then they take it to the mill, and now somebody has to process the tree and cut that, and maybe they hurt themselves and so on. So all these things happen. And then the lumber has to be stacked. And then the lumber then has to be sold, and then it has to go someplace and be made into the proper way to make a table. And then it has to be painted, the table and so on. And maybe they're using lead paint in the process. And maybe it's some 8-year-old kid who's doing that, who's painting that and getting contaminated by that and so on. So to recognize all these compounded things of all these different manufactured things of what nature is and how it all comes together and so on is the realization of the all-pervading suffering that we go through. So all these things become motivation for us to want to liberate or to make it better at the very least. But ultimately, it would be great to say, oh, why can't we just all just leave this? You know, there's so much suffering, there's so much confusion and so on. Why can't we say that? Why can't we just leave this? Why can't we just become a Buddha? Why can't we become a bodhisattva and so on? So the suffering of samsara, here we're saying, consider the suffering of beings in the 6 realms of samsara. Consider who they are. And doing so, great fear and dread arise in the heart. Where am I now? Who am I now? I'm a composite of those 6 realms. You know, in different times of my life, I might have been this, that, or the other thing, you know, but I can recognize those 6 realms within myself. And fear and dread, will I become that again? Will I wind up in the hell realm? If I've been hurting animals, if I've been stepping on cicadas, you know, am I going to come back as a cicada? You know, I mean, people ask these kinds of questions and so on, and they're valid questions. And to have an answer for that, to recognize that, and so on. So to be able to understand our responsibility in all this samsara, in the 3 lower realms and even in the 3 higher ones, there is not an instant of absolute happiness. So even in the God realm, even in the jealous God realm, there's not an instant of absolute happiness where all things are just perfect and will stay perfect. Everything changes. We were talking about this the other night when we were talking about emptiness, and that statement came up, that there's not a moment of absolute happiness in relative phenomenal nature. Nevertheless, I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric experience. The root cause of my samsaric experience. Why am I born into this samsara? Well, there's many reasons, and we may not be able to fathom all those reasons. But I will avoid the root cause of that samsara, which is ignorance, which is hatred, which is attachment, desire, which is jealousy, which is greediness. I will avoid those 5 poisons that make up the 84,000 emotions that we've talked about many times. I will avoid the root cause of that, and then practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. And how do we recognize the path of peace to enlightenment? through our meditation practice, because that's the only time that we can assure ourselves of having some kind of peace. You know, if you think you can do it while you're driving down the street, I don't think so. If you think you can do it while you're sitting at your desk at work, I don't think so. If you can do it while you're at the dinner table or in the kitchen, I don't think so. You may have moments of that. You may have moments of enjoyment and so on, no doubt. But to say that you're having absolute peace at doing any of these things, I don't think it's true. So to practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment is what we can do. So this puts us on the path to enlightenment. These are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. The Dharma is the pathway to enlightenment. Does anybody have any questions about this?
I don't have a question, but if possible, I would like to comment on your comment about not achieving the proper mental state while doing dishes, for example. I feel like it's the same, or similar to, rather, I should say, as saying a mantra while listening to teaching. There's a lot of joy and bliss that I receive from doing that. So I'm wondering, I understand that it's different. I understand that it's different.
Well,
And,
I appreciate it, but the point, my point.
Sometimes
would
that's
be,
all we have time for, is what my
Well,
point is. Sometimes that's all we have time for.
true, but how permanent is it? How permanent is that
It's
bliss
not.
that you attain from that? And does it lead to a permanence of happiness, of bliss? You
It's
know?
a nice distraction, at least, I guess.
Okay, and that's true, and that's true. So you have to take it, you know, with that understanding, you know. But through the practices that we are talking about, that is a pathway, a lasting pathway to a lasting peace. You know, that's the difference between something that's mundane like that and then something that has a higher connotation to it, a transcendent pathway. So point well taken. Thank you. Okay, so in the outline book on page 8 goes into a little bit more detail than I went into talking about these 6 realms. And in the book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation, of course, it goes into even greater detail than the outline does. So you can take a look at that at your convenience and contemplate this, because that is what is needed here. If you see at the bottom of each page that we are going through, each of these 4 recitations of the 4 thoughts, it says at the bottom, it says contemplate. So the point here is to read each one and then to give yourself a moments of contemplation, to think about this. One day you think about it in one way, another day you may think about it in another way. And this is how we get to know these things, because we take these things apart, we put them back together again. And then as we take them apart, sometimes we have other experiences now that show the vulnerabilities that we had walls up around that we didn't realize were there. And then we have to re-examine everything. So now we take it apart and put it back together a slightly different way. So this contemplation is a vital part of meditation. Meditation is what results from exhausted contemplation. That's a big statement. Meditation is the result of exhausted contemplation. When you contemplate something to the point of exhaustion, I can't think about it anymore. I've taken it apart. I've put it back together again. It is what it is. And now I just have to abide with that. Now I just have to practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. That opens up the door to meditation. And then you have a spontaneous meditation. So now we go on to page 5, which is karma. Karma is action. The word karma is Sanskrit for action. And with karma, with an action, there has to be a cause, and then there has to be a result. So it's karma, cause, and result. So here it says, and you can read along with me, please, on page 5. Even if one were a king, at the time of death, one's possessions, enjoyments, friends, and retinue will not follow. But wherever that sentient being goes, his karma follows after him like a shadow. The fruit of one's positive karma is happiness. Suffering is the fruit of negative karma. The inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. Henceforth, practice the Dharma by distinguishing between what should be practiced and what should be given up. So here we recognize that no matter who we are, we're born naked and we die naked, virtually naked. You know, we don't take anything with us. All that we have is our naked body, and that is what becomes dead. All that we have is our spirituality with us. That's what we take with us. And if that spirituality is steeped in karma, karmic seeds, karmic results, then we have to deal with that. It's because of our karma that we have this fortunate life. But yet we have this fortunate life, but yet we all have these little tweaks and these little things that aren't quite as perfect as we'd like them to be. So we have some non-virtuous things that we've done, non-virtuous things that come up. We have some negativities that come up and so on, because those are part of our karma too. But we also have this good karma that gives us, many great blessings and so on. So we see that we have both of these that we have brought with us from prior lifetime. So just exactly how literal that is, there's not enough time to talk about it tonight about that, but we can talk about that. The point now is to recognize that we have these karmic seeds as a result of the things that we have done, and that we have to deal with these on our own. We can't take anything with us. We can't take our friends. We can't take our entourage and so on. The karmic seeds follow us like a shadow. The fruits of one's positive karma is happiness. So if we're having an enjoyable, happy life, it's because of our good karma, the things that we've done. And we should enjoy that. We should be grateful for that. And we should share that and so on. But if we have suffering, and some people, maybe you've had that in your life, maybe you have relatives, maybe you know friends, people that just can't seem to get out of their own way. Everything they do turns to sorrow. Some people, everything they do turns to happiness. It's because of their karma in either situation. Some people just have bad karma, and everything they do is just so complicated, so much suffering and so on. However, there are people that live in places that are full of confusion. There are people that live in war zones. There are people that live in famine zones. There are people that live in hospitals, that have to grow up in hospitals and so on, or work in hospitals and so on, who have a very good attitude, despite the fact that they're in a war zone, despite the fact that they're in a famine, and they kind of elevate other people. So it doesn't matter that whether you're born into a perfect environment. You can be in a very suffering environment, but yet have the right attitude, have the right karmic seeds to have happiness, despite that there is all this suffering around you and so on. So So this is the power of being a human being. This is the power of karma, of recognizing that and being able to make the best of whatever situation we have.
Can I have good karma and bad karma simultaneously?
Of course, yes, you do. I'm sure.
I think I do.
Sure, we all do. Yeah. And, you know, and it seems as though that bad karma, I'm aware of it. And no matter what I try to do, I can't get over it. You know, so you have to let it ripen. You know, it's like a fruit on a tree. You have to let it ripen. You have to let it ripen for the happiness. You have to let it ripen for the lesson of the suffering, so that we recognize the cause of the suffering, so we don't allow that to manifest again. So we need to take responsibility for it. Here's what it says. It says, the fruit of positive karma is happiness, suffering. The fruit of negative karma, the inexorable, that which cannot be moved by influence or persuasion. This natural law of karma, this natural law, just like the natural law of physics, of gravity, or of electromagnetics, or of the strong force, or of the weak force. These natural laws are present. And we can see in our lives and in other people's lives that there is this law of reciprocity. When you do good things happen. When you do bad things happen. And you can change things. You can have good things happening to you, but then all it takes is one bad thing, and now everything turns its head around and everything now becomes bad. You can be a perfect person all your life and then kill somebody when you're 60 years old and you spend the rest of your life in jail. And you can see people that suffer like this. We see these people, we see, you know, the people talking about fame, talking about sports stars, and we talk about movie stars and all these people with great means and great wealth and so on, who have all this pleasure and they abuse it, and then they wind up dying in jail. So this inexorable karmic causation is the mode of abiding in all dharmas. We have to abide. We have to live in this mixture of dharmas. We have to learn how to navigate this. We're the architects that created this for ourselves. We created this life for ourselves. We designed this life for ourselves, like an architect designs a building. But then we become the engineers. The engineers are always tweaking. Here's the building, but we got to tweak this. We got to tweak that. This situation is happening. I got to replace that with this. I got to do this. We're always tweaking. So as these many things are happening to us, we have to deal with these many dharmas. We have to deal with these many results of past karmas and work with them. So we're constantly adjusting. But henceforth, I will practice the Dharma, by distinguishing what should be practiced and what should be given up. So much of what we do is a waste of time. So much of what we do doesn't lead to anything useful. So much of what we do is out of laziness, or is out of some kind of false impression that we need to do this and that we want to do this. So we need to examine that. How do we do that? Through our practice, by taking the time for the practice and contemplating this, and then exhausting the contemplation, then allowing the meditation to manifest. Then we say, wow, I've got this peace of mind. Why can't I keep this peace of mind all day? Well, you can. You just don't want to go back into all the stuff that you eliminated to get to that peace of mind. And you learn how to engineer your way through that, or how to eliminate that. You find that you do things smarter. When I was working, I went through this period of my life were, 40s and 50 years old. I'm working on my career, and I was working 80 hours a week. Totally miserable. My bank account was growing, that was great. But meanwhile, I wasn't sleeping well. I was irritable all the time, and it wasn't a good experience. And then I realized, at some point, I said, I'm just working harder. I got to start working smarter. And I started simplifying. And it was a system, it was a systemic problem with the particular business I was in, the company I was in. We were a young company that was growing and so on. And we got together. The managers got together and said, we're all doing this. We're all working 80 hours. We're all miserable. What do we need to do? And then we started realizing we needed to hire some new people. We had to delegate some responsibility. We had to do different things, do things a little differently and so on. And lo and behold, we got down to working 40, 50 hours a week. We were still working hard, but we were working smarter. And we had our peace of mind much more, and we still had the same results. We still had the money in the bank, which was what we need, why we were there, what we needed to do, and so on. So the same thing is true with our life, whatever it is. We're doing things so intensely, we're doing things so strongly, and so on. We think we need to be doing all these things, but we need to take a break. And maybe this past year with the COVID, that was the silver lining that so many people have said, that it's taught me that I can kind of take my time a little bit more. There's another way of doing the things that I was doing before. And now I need to incorporate this into my life, the rest of my life, and not go back into the way I was that was full of stress and turmoil and so on. So practice the Dharma by distinguishing what should be practiced and what should be given up. So what should be practiced, of course, is good behavior, is happiness, of doing the things of simplicity and so on. So at this time, with karma, the famous story that's always been told is someone spoke up in one of the Buddha's teachings and said, "Oh, Buddha, please tell me, what were my past lives? I want to know who I was. I'm so fortunate that I had this life. Who was I in a past life?" Or maybe somebody else stood up and said, "Oh, Buddha, I'm suffering so much. What did I do in my past life? Why am I having this?" and so on. And the Buddha said, "Well, what you are now is what you did before. The result of what you did. So if you did good deeds, that's why you have a good life now. If you have a bad life now, if you have a difficult life, it's because you did difficult things in your past life. You made difficult things in your bad life and so on. And now you're having to live those results out and so on." So the Buddha said, the question you should be asking is, what is my future life? Because the future life is the result of what you're doing now. If you want to have a good future life, you need to be virtuous now. If you want to have a bad, non-virtuous life, well, continue doing the bad stuff that you do, and you'll assured have a bad life in the future. So whether that bad life is next week or next month or next year, or literally a next life, it's the same point, that what we do is going to come back on you. If we do good things will result. And we can transform things. If we have bad things happening and we respond in kind with more bad things, then we're bound to have bad results. But if we have those bad things happening to us, but we learn how to transform those things into virtue, now we can have a virtuous result. And with the same token, if we have good things coming to us, good things that we want to do, good causes, but we manipulate those, we transform those into non-virtuous actions, now it contaminates it, it spoils it, and now we have bad results. So the responsibility is ours. So this is the karma. So the four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma is, in this case, karma, that we have responsibility for our happiness. We have responsibility for our suffering. So that says, well, how do I recognize that? How do I work with that? How do I change that? The Dharma helps us to do that. So this is what we've been learning. So page, or rather chapter 6 in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, chapter 9 in the outline book then goes into karma, cause, and result. So you can read this and study that. And I think in the package that I sent you all, that there was a little card in there that had the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues. So I want to leave time for discussion. We can talk about the virtues next time if you like, but they're fairly obvious when you think about them, but they're also very easily suppressed. And what we need to do is to bring them up. We need to recognize the non-virtues and the virtues, so that we don't practice the non-virtues, we practice the virtues. So it is an important thing. So we do need to talk about it. And I'd rather let people talk right now, and we can talk about those virtues next time. So did everybody get that card? Everybody got that mailing I sent? Okay, very good. Okay. Tom, I know you got it. Michael, I know you got it too. So please, somebody say something. Somebody tell a joke. Enough of this heavy stuff. Zara, she's always great to kick it off. Go ahead, Zara.
I was gonna say something. It was like, but I feel like it's just like you were. I was just taking notes. Sometimes when you talk, I take notes, Lance. But I started getting smart and I'm typing them on my Word document, like on my computer. So, you said like do good things, good virtuous deeds, and good things happen. So like these things can be immediate or delayed. And the same thing with bad things, right? Like they're like, they could be like obvious and you can see direct correlation almost, right? In some situations.
That's true. And the book does go into that. You know, we can spend time talking about that, but I wanted to give the general sense of this. Yes. So do you have a question there, or are you just making an observation?
Well, I guess do you like see people who run off and are like trying to like earn karma points almost, like just running out, but then it's missing the intention, I guess, right? You can't just kind of haphazardly go through these interactions because that's really not accumulating anything for you. Or is it? It's like partial credit, part credit, like half a point versus a full point.
Well, there are mitigating circumstances. You know, there are, and you know, unintended consequences. So your intention is very important, but it doesn't negate your responsibility to those unintended consequences. And to be aware of that, and to, when you have the opportunity to liberate that, you should. You know, so an example is, you know, riding down the street in your car and cicadas are hitting your windshield, you know. So, you know, as you're driving down the street going, "Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum," every time one of these bugs hits your windshield, because you're killing it. You know, so it's being mindful of that. Or you're just driving down the Beltway during the fall, or during the springtime, but mostly during the fall, and you see the deer on the side of the road, you see a dog on the side of the road that was killed overnight or something like that, and you say, "Oh, Mani Padme Hum," that you're bringing a mindfulness that a life has been lost. and you're liberating it. You're taking some responsibility to be able to, at the very least, give some light to that being. So that's a radical, on one side, but maybe it's something much less drastic on a lighter side of things.
So Lance, because I'm outside a lot, and then I think I guess I'm just, since no one else is jumping in, I'll take some discussion time. So I've always done this, like does anyone else pick up the earthworms and try to save the earthworm by throwing it into the grass? I always pick up earthworms, and it's like a silly little thing, but I'm like, I've always done that since I was like a little kid, picked up the earthworm, try to dig a hole so it didn't freeze, but I'm like, it's still going to die, right? And like at some point I realized it's still going to die. So now I like stop and think about, think about that. Is that just an evolution of my understanding of like coming through this, like coming into contact with them, really thinking about these things more than it just being an action where I was instinctively like not wanting it to die, right? But maybe it should be dying. Maybe I shouldn't be touching it, right? Maybe that is its journey, if you will. Because you just talked about the example about the animals, right, on the side of the road. But am I interrupting something there? I know it's a silly example, but I pick up like 10 earthworms a day, Lance. Tom is saying, I'm not joking, you all. I saved like
I
5
can't wait
a day.
to see your Tonka. It's going to be magnificent.
I walk with disabled children. You were talking about people who don't have the concept, and I work with a lot of these children who are intellectually disabled, who don't have that awareness. But I'm like, hey, we got to save this earthworm. So what does that mean though? Like for me, is that natural for me to be questioning that, like an intellectual, like reflection of my own action at that level?
Sure, I think it's healthy to do that. Absolutely, and yeah, so your intention is pure. Your intention is good, and if there's some kind of a intervention with the death of some being, a worm or whatever, then where's the harm to that? I don't understand that. Why it wouldn't be something that's good, and be grateful for that opportunity, and that worm may not have the ability to show any gratitude, but within yourself, it's something that you remember and something that is important to you and that you can share with other people. So I think it's a good point.
Hey, Lance and friends, I think when we have this sort of loving kindness behavior towards the minor creatures, if we're really observant, for instance, if we run across a bug that obviously a wasp that had just been stepped on or something, and it's laying on its back, and maybe one wing is twitching, if we want to pick it up or not and move it away from further stomping, I would do that. But I do chant Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Hum, in a whisper or loud enough for the little beastie to hear. And I've been doing that for a couple of years. And if you're really observant and you just sort of hold that little life in your loving awareness and watch and send it good energy so that it can have a better rebirth and move on. I've noticed that when I chant to these little critters, that there'll be little spasms of life, that there'll be like a moment of the legs just kind of going off. So it's like the beast is hearing something. It's like the bee is catching the vibe. It's like the bee's being is feeling cared for and feeling lifted up. and that affects the body a little bit. So whether that's stupid or not, whether it's ridiculous or not, it's part of my illusion, it's part of my delusion. But for me, it just validates this behavior, and it reinforces me to do it again and again and again, because I do believe from experience now that that an animal in the throes of death, if sent positive loving energy, and if you sort of rise up the Buddha nature by chanting, that this helps. That this, I mean, and I would want to be chanted too if I were a wasp and somebody had just whacked me. And I firmly believe that if somebody had just stomped me and I was just sitting there waiting to pass on, and somebody leaned over and said, Om Mano Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, part of me would be grateful. Part of me would know that I was being loved. And part of me would know that I was free. So I'm the same. I do it all the time, and my kids think it's crazy. My wife doesn't think it's crazy because she's the kind of person that doesn't step on bugs. But like Lance says, just see by experience, and experience reinforces behavior like this. So I love it. I love it. It's not terrible to run into dying critters, because that's the cycle. But you really can make that last moment one of illumination for a being, whether it's sentient or not. My thoughts only.
Thank you very much. That's very good. Somebody else have a comment or question about this? Bonnie?
I totally agree with Michael on what he said with the critters. We've had some really amazing experiences with them. Years ago, we did wildlife rescue and rehab. And since we live on water, we would do ducks and geese. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Muscovy ducks. They're the black ducks with the red on them. People call them ugly ducks. And that always made me a little angry, because I think they're beautiful. There isn't such a thing as an ugly creature. And I would always correct them. But we had one season here where because of the heat, the water, even though it's tidal water, the heat built up some kind of a virus that was killing them. And just dozens of them were dying, and we would find them near death. And we really felt like our job then was to hold them and help them have a kind transition, and to wish them well on their journey and their next life. And I, as hard as it was, I feel really blessed that we had that opportunity.
That's sweet. That's a good story.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about one of my practices. It's washing dishes. That's if you can do that without having any kind of bad feelings about having to do them, or something like that, it's just the sweetest and most interesting way of cleaning house. Because
Meditation.
it's a meditation, and it puts you, you become centered, and then I don't know. I have a lot of things that I do that are centering. And I try to do that as much as I can. Any of the many times I can wrestle my wife out of it, which she gives up real easy.
All right, well, thank you very much, both of you. Somebody else, please?
A question about this, Lance. This picture of this
Yes,
over here,
yes,
in the center, there's like 6 more people
yes,
like around.
yes.
What are these people in the middle here? And then you've got a bird and it looks like,
Well, let me explain. So in the very hub are the 3 animals, are the rooster, the snake, and the pig. So they each have the tail of the other in its mouth, and they're going around in a circle. The pig represents ignorance. The rooster represents desire, and the snake represents aggression or hatred. So those are the 3 roots of the hub of the wheel of existence. So that's what's rotating. That's the main, those are the main 3 poisons. And ignorance is the single main poison. So we talk about the 5 poisons, which include the jealousy and the greediness. So so those are the main poison, the 3 hub poisons, and then the 5 poisons. Then the 2 sides, you see that on one side, on the white side, there are beings who are on the ascendant, who are rising up and who are following what appears to be a holy person at the top of that semicircle. So it's showing that there's a holy person there. And then at the other side, the black side, then you see at the bottom there that there is a demonic looking person who is pulling those people down or leading those people down on the descendant. And it's showing our dualistic nature, you know, the fundamental aspect of our dualistic nature between virtue and non-virtue.
okay, now is, and then I see 2, it looks like 2 Buddhas at the top corner.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So in each of the 6 realms of human existence, of the 6 human realms, there is a Buddha. Because if we're in those realms, the question becomes, how do we get out of those realms? So the answer is, there's a Buddha in each one of the realms. So in the hell realm, which is people are in hot or cold hells. They're either being crushed by freezing glaciers grinding against each other, or some variation like that. Or they're in a hot hell where they're drinking hot molten lead, or they're taking swords and they're bringing swords down into their body, and they die these terrible deaths, and then immediately are revived to only die again in the same manner, over and over and over again, relentlessly dying like that. Well, there's a Buddha in that realm who has, in one hand, has ice, has water, and has fire in the other. So he's offering cooling for those that are suffering in the hot hells, and he's offering warmth and heat for those that are in the cold hells, so that for a moment, that those beings will be relieved of their suffering so that they can recognize that there is Buddha nature. And then they can liberate, then they can begin to liberate themselves from their suffering. In the hungry ghost realm, who are suffering from thirst and hunger, there is a Buddha there who has a casket of food in one hand and who has a vessel of nectar or water in the other hand. So he's offering them something to eat, something to drink that will satisfy them, if only for a moment, to recognize their suffering, to recognize the cause of their suffering, and to be able to liberate themselves from that cause of suffering. In the animal realm, which is ignorance, the Buddha there is holding a book to be able to read to the animal, to be able to show the animal for a moment that there is something that they can liberate, that there's something beyond them, their animalistic self, that they can liberate themselves and they can be born. Then in the jealous God realm, there is a Buddha who's holding a shield in one hand, and in the other hand, holding a wisdom sword, a flaming sword. So the flaming sword cuts through ignorance, and the shield is able to protect them from the harm that's coming from the other jealous gods. So for a moment, they can be free from their suffering and they can be liberated. In the God realm, there is a Buddha there who's playing a vina, a stringed instrument, like a guitar-like instrument, who can demonstrate to the gods compassion. The thing that they are missing is compassion. So through the music or through the art, that there is great compassion that is being displayed. What it takes to be able to make that music, what it takes to be able to create that art is an expression of compassion. And so that brings for a moment in the mind of the gods that there is suffering and that needs compassion, so they can liberate themselves from their pleasures. Then in the human realm, there is Buddha Shakyamuni, who is standing there, who has a staff of the shepherd. And in his other hand, he has a bowl of nectar, which is the wisdom nectar, the nectar of the Dharma, to be able to liberate beings from their desire, from their changing, from their fear of changing, and so on, to be able to shepherd them through the other realms and see that this is all part of the human psychophysical drama that we go through. So there's a Buddha for each one of those realms.
And the two on the top there,
So one on the top is Amitabha, and the other one is Shakyamuni. So Amitabha is the Buddha of discriminating awareness, and the other one is Buddha Shakyamuni, who shows us the way of renunciation, of the cessation of suffering.
so then if we follow their practices, we can get out of these wheels.
Exactly. We liberate ourselves from the suffering. Yes.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's what we are learning, and that's what the Dharma is all about. How to liberate oneself. That's what we're learning. The method of liberation. That's what the jewel ornament of liberation is all about. Liberation from suffering. Liberation from the psychophysical drama of being a human being. Thank you for the question. Sorry for the long answer, but it couldn't be avoided. Anybody else have something? Please, somebody who hasn't spoke.
From the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we close our eyes, there's constant karma being created with our thoughts, our speech, their actions. So as far as, if you look at the 10 virtues, the first one is taking of life. Most monastics, or at least in the Tego order, before they even get up in the morning, as soon as they open their eyes, they say a prayer, asking for forgiveness for whatever insect or life that they might take by walking or going through daily life, and hoping and wishing that whatever life that they take unintentionally will be reborn with a favorable rebirth and hopefully attain enlightenment. So that is a very, I guess, a mindful act that we do every day, just before you get up, before you even put your foot on the ground. You don't know what's there. Just say a little prayer, because we're not taking these lives intentionally. Unintentionally, I'm sure we take thousands of lives. But, hopefully through our being mindful that these lives will have a very favorable rebirth in their next life. That's all we can really do.
Thank you.
It seems like unless we were eating like totally organic food or something, we're killing billions of insects through herbicide. You would have a yard that you wouldn't put grub control, you wouldn't put any type of herbicide on that. The reality, obviously, you have mosquitoes, malaria, and things like that. I mean, we intentionally, in a way, kill billions of these insects that are considered harmful, and I don't know how you could say we don't.
Yeah, so being mindful of the liberation of those beings is one thing, and the suffering of those beings, to be mindful of that. So every time we say Om Mani Padme Hum, that we're sending light to all those beings that are in the bardo, to be mindful of that. It's very easy for us to get complacent and to, abide in our arrogance of our splendor of being human beings and so on, and to take it completely for granted. And we're just visitors, along with everybody else, along with all the other animals, all the other beings. We're all just visitors, it's just all temporary. And to recognize that and to be able to honor each other in that way is humbling. Somebody else? Thomas, I see you turned off your microphone. You got something? Or turned it on, I should say.
Are you talking to me or?
Yeah, talking to you. I'm talking to you.
Huh.
You have anything to add?
I try to recollect what Chalopa has to say, his 6 words. Don't dwell on the past. Don't dwell on the future. Don't dwell on the present. Don't try to control. Don't elaborate. There's another one. So not to
Don't
say
control
so much.
others. Don't control others.
And not to, I know that a certain amount of conversation is encouraged in a forum or a meeting like this. In my everyday life, I just try to keep the communication to a minimum. Fewer emails, fewer phone calls, fewer engagements with others, because it's sort of what I've been trained to do and what I've learned to do and where I am right now.
Okay. Thank you. Ed, I see you activated your microphone.
I don't have anything to contribute other than silence at this point. Lot to think about.
Good stuff to think about.
Good stuff to think about.
Okay.
Thought-provoking stuff to think about.
Good. Thank you. I think you've heard this at least a couple times now, haven't you?
Well,
No, first time?
yeah, I mean, it all connects. So I've heard it before and it's also new.
Right. Yeah. Some of it is there's a remembering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Grant, you mentioned mosquitoes. And one of my teachers said that you pray for everything and everybody, and we pray for all sentient beings, which include mosquitoes. But the thing about it is, I can't do everything for everybody. I can only do for myself. And one of the ways that we control the mosquitoes is we don't allow them to become alive. In other words, we clean out all of our water things, water sources, and we keep them from growing in there. There's a lot of other things that we probably could be doing. You know, you step on an ant, but very truly, it's kind of difficult to kill those ants. But you know, it's like from God to God, which is, I don't think, who to use God. But in some of these things that we talk about, there has to be some kind of unifying force that is kind of guiding everything, not necessarily clunk, 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 clunk. But kind of a wispy thing that kind of draws you into a position that you have to take, that it's not that you're not allowed to do this or not allowed to do that, but this wispy force kind of puts you in a position to where you feel that you have to do this, whether it's you open up your mail and you see that you got a bill and you decide that you have to pay it because I want to keep using whatever it is that I've got here. And the universe kind of directs you that way. It like nails you something or boxes you into a corner. And
Forgive me, but we're out of time, so we got to move on.
okay, well, I'm in the corner.
Okay.
Now,
We didn't get to hear anything from Kate T or from Rebecca tonight. Did you guys want to say anything quickly tonight before we move on? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. It's been great
I
having
agree.
everybody.
That's what I have to contribute.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Great. Thank you. All right. So next week we'll continue our conversation. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about karma because there is more to talk about the qualities of karma, the characteristics of karma, to understand that because it is so diabolical. It's such a blessing on one hand, but diabolical on another. So we need to explore that a little bit. So we'll recite our dedication here on page 20, a short dedication. This is page 20 of the 101 book of the by the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Sri Khompa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Om, ah, Om, Om, ah, Om, Om, ah, Om. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. And you can turn to page 6 here in this page, and you can see the Om Ah Hum. So a little bit of a description of each one. So we can talk more about that next time too. So thank you all. See you all next week.